Kim and I have been married for like 30-something years now, but we started off with nothing. People think, well, she married me for my money. That wasn't true because I was kind of between businesses. I had lost my second business.
Not only did you not have money, we were like in a lot of debt.
$800,000 in debt.
Yeah.
So she
bad
didn't marry.
debt. Bad debt, not good debt.
Yeah. Well, it was just a learning experience.
It was a great learning experience, and we paid it all back.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying, cut up your credit cards. I think that's really ridiculous because a credit card is not the problem. In fact, I love my credit cards.
To develop yourself to be, as the Army says, to be all you can be. I have no idea what it feels like to pay off your investors when you screw up. So I was cringe when I hear, we just crowdfunded that. I'm going, well, how are you going to pay them back?
That's the key. That's the key.
And good debt is debt that somebody else pays for you. But the reason getting rid of bad debt was so important for us in our starting our lives together was that it's easier to get good debt, i.e. loans and things like that on apartment houses and commercial buildings and rental property if you have no bad debt. And so we had no blemishes by the time we came through this process. We never stopped investing, by the way, but we did pay off the bad debt and get into good debt. So good debt is very simply debt that makes you rich and somebody else pays off for you, i.e. your tenants. And bad debt is debt that makes you poorer every month and you have to pay for. So we'll start with steps of getting out of debt. So step number one is you got to tell yourself the truth. And I think that's one of the hardest things I had to do because, Kim had never met a financial disaster like me before. She couldn't believe anybody could be driving a Mercedes and living in a nice hotel right on the shores of Diamond Head and be flat broke, but also deeply in debt. And I kept pretending I was rich, and that was, I was faking it till I make it. And, I was praying to God and Jesus and Buddha and hoping that money would come by and pretending I had no debt, and I was looking good and, eating in the best restaurants and flaunting the cash. But I was flat broke. You can fake your girlfriends, but you can't fake your wife. And so the first thing I had to do with Kim was sit down and eventually tell her the truth that I wasn't as rich as I looked.
Well, it's true. You've got to tell yourself the truth, because if you have a goal of where you want to go, you're not going to be able to get there if you don't know where you are. Step number 2 is you've got to stop accumulating the bad debt.
Yes, and what that meant was sometimes you might have to make a little bit of sacrifice. And when Kim and I moved from Hawaii to California and we went homeless right away, and we were living in the garage basement apartment, there was sometimes I had to run up. We had no money. And so Kim had like $2 to get through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday till I came home Sunday night and hopefully got paid for what I was doing.
Number 3 is make a list of all, and the key word is all, the debt that you owe.
And she's still giving me a dirty look when she says the word all because, I had so much debt I didn't want to tell her. And I kept sneaking off and paying bills here and sneaking around there. And finally she says, because I didn't want to tell her how bad the Titanic was that I ran aground and called my last business. And finally we had to sit down and I had to write down all the investors I owed money to, all the friends and family I owed money to, and everybody I felt bad about, that I was still not paying and things like this. So she had me sit down and write. And even, the credit card companies, they get really nasty when you don't pay them. So I had to show her the envelopes I was receiving from the angry credit card companies and all this stuff, and basically tell the truth and face the music. Step number 4 is a very important step. And all you guys out there who are deeply in debt and all this, I'd like to say this is probably the most important first real step you can go through, or a major commitment. And that is hire a bookkeeper. If you look in the workbook, I talk about a bookkeeper as part of your team. And there was times, I was just trying to do my own books. And, when I'm stressed out and embarrassed and upset that I owe so much money, I would not really confront the truth. Plus I'm messy. I'm not very detail oriented. So Kim and I finally went out, and my rich dad talked to me, and we're talking over with him. He says, "Do you have a bookkeeper?" And I said, "No, because it costs too much money." And he says, "Look, rich people have bookkeepers. Poor people don't. You have got to keep accurate records."
Okay, well, this is step number 5. And now that you've got a list of every debt that you owe, you're going to make a visual picture of that debt. And very simply, what you're going to do is you're going to draw a quadrant for each debt. And in the upper left-hand column of the quadrant, you're going to put the creditor. So, for example, it might be Visa. In the upper right-hand column goes the total amount owed, total balance owed. Bottom left-hand corner goes the minimum monthly amount that you have to pay every month. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to divide your total amount due into the monthly payments. Is
So
that
in the
correct?
example in the workbook, it's Visa, minimum $100 a month, $2,000 total payments. And that means the number 20 means it'll take you 20 months to wipe out this debt.
Yeah, you basically take the total amount due, which is $2,000, divided by 100, and that equals 20 months. So for every single debt that you have, you're going to draw this visual. And again, refer to the workbook because it's in there. It'll make it very, very clear. But for every single debt, you're going to set up this quadrant, and you're going to have this circled number that says how many months it will take to pay these off.
When Kim and I met, we had nothing. It took us 10 years to go from nothing to financially free.
Wow.
So she was 37, and I was 47. But that's the power of focusing on
Asset column.
assets versus liability. Most people are so busy working for money, so busy trying to pay their bills, and so busy buying liabilities they think are assets. So my first gift to Kim was the counting game to get her head in here. And today we're financially free. And that's the whole thing. So everybody can do it. It's a matter of putting your head into the right column. And then for me, it was in 73, I took my first real estate investment course here. I'm free. I lost money, made money back, but I never got out of the asset. There's a lot of people who can't make $1,000. And the reason they can't make $1,000 is because mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, they're not capable of making $1,000, whatever the case is. So Kim and I today are in the multi-millions of dollars in making money, but we wouldn't have gotten there because one time we were having trouble at $1,000. So every time we had a problem, we had to get bigger than the problem. For many people out there with $1,000 problem, they're not going to solve the problem until they personally develop themselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically to be bigger than $1,000 problem.
So step number 6 is to determine the order for paying off each debt.
And this is where that little circled number is going to come into play. You're going to start with the smallest circled number you have. And people often say, I want to make one comment. This does not take into account the interest rate on the debt. And shouldn't I pay off my biggest interest rate first? Don't we want to get the one with the highest interest rate off the books first? Not necessarily in this formula. In this formula, you want to see a result quickly. You want to know that this formula works. So we're going to take the shortest debt that you have, the one that you can pay off the quickest. And when you see that result, when you see that paid off, you can see the formula working, you have a win, it'll encourage you to move forward. So that's why we start with the smallest number.
So it's nothing, as Kim says, it's not about the interest payment, it's the fastest one you can wipe out immediately.
So when you look at the average person, they have a job, money comes in here, they pay for their house, and the money goes to a bank through a mortgage. So it's not an asset because the cash is flowing out. So it's a liability. So the definition of liability, does it take money from your pocket? And for an asset, does it put money in your pocket? So when I have a rental property here, it puts money in my pocket. So if I live in the house, it's a liability because even if I have no debt on it, I still have taxes, depreciation, repairs, and upkeep, insurance, and all this. When I rent a property, I've done a good job buying it and structuring it. Every month, it sends me money. So I started off when I was 25. I had a little one-bedroom condo, and it put $25 in my pocket. It was a start. So this was good debt. You see, the debt also went out and paid, but it also put $25 in my pocket. So net, I was making money from my little house. So today, my wife and I own 6,500 of them. And every month, 6,500 houses put money in my pocket. My people who live in them love me and all this because they have a place to live. But all of this comes from debt. So they're 100% finance here. It's all debt. So this is good debt. And what makes it good debt are the two most important words: cash flow.
We became financially free instead of going back into debt or just spending that cash on doodads and things like this. For those of you who are rich dad, poor dad, or played the cash flow game, you know what we do is we invest that money even faster. So in this case, all that money, instead of spending it, we just kept buying more properties, stocks, bonds, never buy mutual funds. But we had money to invest at even greater rate of speed. And that's how our investment rate went from 30% up to 80% today, and is now in the millions of dollars we're continuing to reinvest. And we live off of our cash flow from our properties. So it's really interesting how this process starts to snowball. It's a compounding effect of getting richer and richer faster. So this process of getting out of debt was how we started in 1984, and I was really in bad shape. And Kim applied some discipline and some truth-telling to the process, and holding my feet to the fire, and we had Betty to keep my conscience in and remind me. And in 10 years, we not only were out of debt, we were financially free. We're making about $10,000 a month, about $120,000 a year, and our expenses were about $36,000 a year. So every month we made about $10,000 from our rental properties and about $3,000 in expenses. And we just still to this day, 10 years later or 20 years later, we just keep doing the same thing, and now it's in the millions of dollars. Same habit, same process, staying out of debt, getting richer and richer. We have a lot of good debt, lots and lots of apartment houses and commercial buildings, but that's good debt. And that's how we get richer and richer and reinvesting it. We don't believe in living below our means. Today, you can say, well, when do we start enjoying our money? Today, Kim and I own about 7 cars, lots of houses. We travel by private jet and all that, but we have the cash flow from our investments doing that, and not our credit cards paying for that stuff. And it's not debt, it's income coming into us constantly. So our assets from our investments buy our liabilities today. And the reason so many people get in trouble in the first place is they buy liabilities first, and then they try and buy assets second, and it never happens. They just keep buying more liabilities like cars, boats, and things like this. By getting out of debt, bad debt, and then buying assets, now our assets buy our liabilities. So we still have a great lifestyle, incredible lifestyle. The best thing is we don't have to worry about money. We don't have to worry about anything, because we always have more and more money coming in because the process keeps going. It takes discipline and dedication, and remember, it is a process. It is a process, from going from where you are to where you want to be. And if you don't have dedication and discipline, the process falls apart. Not because it's a bad process, but because you lack discipline and dedication.